I have a way of saying hello, which has become sort of like a trademark, which is quite weird. Like people actually like will come up to me and say hello, like like it's kind of my my thing, which is quite weird. Hello, I am Ciro De Siena and I am the head of video at Cars at Koza. I run the YouTube channel and I'm the main presenter on the channel. My story, it's weird. I don't get to tell it too often. Yeah, I suppose my dad was a bit of a car guy. The first car I think I remember feeling was really cool was his Mustang. You know, one of those old Mustangs, which I wish he kept because it would be worth a fortune today. But anyway, and then I actually, in matric, I met this really lovely girl, and her dad was a sort of like gentleman racing driver, and he used to bring in all of these really expensive British car magazines. At the time, British car magazines were like this big, you know, they were the real deal. And I just used to devour those, and I always had this sort of public speaking background, like the debating at school and that sort of thing, which I always really enjoyed. And then at about the same time, Top Gear was hitting its, you know, kind of really hitting its stride, the Jeremy Clarkson era of Top Gear. And I remember watching him review a Ferrari Enzo, and I just said to myself, I was like, that's what I want to do for a living. You know, I was about 17 at the time. And so when I went to varsity, I think we borrowed a friend's mom's handy cam. We started shooting car videos. And then just on whatever cars we could get our hands on, really, our own cars and friends' cars and stuff. And then a friend and I built a website at a time when there were probably only about 3 car websites in the whole country. I mean, Facebook hadn't launched yet, and the internet was a very different place. And it got us, we built this thing over a few months. We had to build it custom. I mean, I don't even think WordPress existed yet. And we launched this thing, and then we flew up to Auto Africa, or it was called Auto Africa at the time. It became the Johannesburg International Motor Show. And I like borrowed this like crap suit, and I had like long hair because I was a student, obviously. And you have to have long hair. And I just went and introduced myself to all the manufacturers, and then they actually started giving us test cars. And then I dented my first ever test car, which was a Land Rover Discovery, and I thought my career was over, which was not good. Got an internship at GQ, and then they published me sort of straight away in their cars publication, which was separate at the time. And that sort of, I think that sort of launched, yeah, it launched me into the space. I ran my website for a long time and never really made me much money at all, actually. And I used to like waiter to make, you know, to sort of keep myself going. And it was quite funny as I'd get test cars. So I'd go to my waitering shift in like a BMW 7 Series, like put on an apron and carry on. Yeah, so those were crazy times. I think my break, I suppose, if there's such a thing, came when the Espresso show on SABC3 was looking for someone to do like live car segments, and my partner at the time, sort of partner in crime at the time, we went in and we screen tested, and for whatever reason they quite liked us, and so they gave us the segment, and that lasted about 4 years, which was really cool. He pulled out at some stage, which just left me doing it, which I kind of preferred actually. And we at about 3 years into that, Cars at Koza was looking for journos. I think they put out a tweet or something which I responded to, and then I met the founder Ross for coffee in Cape Town when he was down in Cape Town, and we just hit it off. And Ross and I have just had and Al as well, have just had this fantastic relationship just based on trust, really, you know. And we started the YouTube channel, and yeah, and I suppose it was the right place for me to be in the business. You know, head down, make videos, make the coolest videos you can. So they kind of gave me almost full autonomy with it, you know. Although in the beginning, I'll never forget this because I actually have, and I have the email as proof. One of the videos I made was on the Toyota Corolla, and it sort of had like, you know, it was a bit cheeky and it had one or two funny scenes. And I remember Ross replying to me with his feedback. I think it was the second video we ever made. And he said, I think this video is like a bit too humorous, you know. I think it's like, but you know, we want like straight consumer advice. And I was like, I said to, you know, I sort of went back and very respectfully, obviously, and I was like, look, I think you got to give a reason for people to come back, you know, and to maybe, if they're going to give you 6-7 minutes of their time, you know, maybe they should enjoy themselves a little bit. And I think Ross saw, you know, the guys saw that that was potentially where we could have like a bit of a USP in the space, and we started pushing in that direction. And I think we've become known for that, like these sort of, I think we get the infotainment balance right, you know, which is quite tricky actually. And infotainment's like a buzzword, you know, it's like one of those things like, what does it actually really mean? But I think I try present in a way that that keeps people interested, you know, in what can sometimes be a very dry topic. I mean, it's fine if you're drifting an M2 around a racetrack, but if it's like a Kia Picanto review, no offense to Kia Picantos, they're nice cars, but you know, you got to give people a reason to stick around and maybe not just go off and read an article or watch someone else's video. So and I think we've seen some. I think that's been part of the success. So as far as I can tell, we're the biggest corporate channel in the country. Ross hates the word corporate. We're the biggest branded channel in the country, let's maybe say that. And by subscribers, we're on about 235,000 subscribers now. We've got about 650 videos on the channel, quite a large back catalogue. We do about, most of the time we're cruising at about 1 million views a month, roughly. So in terms of the sheer numbers, I think it's been a success, you know, and I think it's brought cars oh, let me try to get that right again. Cut. I think it's brought Cars on Kosa to an audience that it might not have reached, you know. And I think it's also given people a reason to maybe to love the brand a bit more, to like the brand a bit more. I don't think, I'm not sure people have a rapport with any of our rivals, you know. And I think that's what YouTube, particularly YouTube, gives you. They almost build a relationship with perhaps me and the brand. But what I love about it is that South Africans of all ages and races and backgrounds seem to be able to relate to me. It's probably the thing I'm actually most proud of and most grateful for that my career has given me. And yeah, it's something that I prize and I value very, very highly about what I do. And it's something that also, it helps me sort of steer myself, you know, when you're trying to make little decisions on a day-by-day basis. We do have an audience, you know, that we have to look after. And in that there's pressure, there really is pressure. You have to be careful, and our audience really keeps us honest. They really do. They'll tell us when we stuff up. So that's exciting. But I think that there's something quite special here actually, and I think we filled a gap in this country. It's funny, when I started off, 16 years ago, my whole sort of mission was South Africa needs its own Top Gear. You know, that was as simple as that. It's why I moved to the Western Cape, because this is the best place to shoot cars quite possibly in the world. And it's funny because it's now 16 years later, and I still don't think South Africa ever got its own Top Gear, you know. Even though we got onto TV last year, what we basically did was, because of lockdown and we couldn't shoot, we took old episodes and we sort of put it together as a TV show, and I presented the studio links from my lounge, you know, which was quite exciting, and we got onto DSTV. So I think in some ways I actually did achieve the mission, which was great. But I think the Cars at Kosa YouTube channel did fill a gap in this country. And increasingly it will, because people's watching patterns now and the way they engage with YouTube is changing all the time. You know, when we started off, we can see in the back end which devices our videos are played on. And it used to be like 2% smart TV, and now it's like 12% smart TV. So it's like a 6 times growth. You know, it's still 50% mobile, which is how South Africa is really. Most people are on the internet on their phones. But I'm really excited about that because we release everything in 4K, you know, and you can't really buy an HD TV anymore. Everything's 4K. So the fact that we're pushing out high quality content in 4K, which people are now watching on their TVs, is really exciting to me. You know, that's where we want to be, I think. So yeah, it's been a mix, putting out a mix of consumer advice, of really entertaining videos, of sometimes quite pointless videos like drag races between cars, which you probably shouldn't drag race against each other, but audience loves it. And just trying to be as consistent as possible, which I think is actually the hardest part. And a couple of years ago, I actually very nearly burnt out because I was doing everything myself. I mean, I would do like the catering on set, and I'd hire the invoicing and booking the locations and all the rest of it, and it was just too much. And we built a bit of a team around me, which has been great. And the video department is now 5 guys, and that's helped a lot. That took a lot of pressure off me and allowed me to just focus on what it allowed me to focus on where I add the most value, you know, which is in front of camera. That's it. That's where I should be at my best. You know, there's no point spreading yourself so thin that you just end up being crap at the thing that you add the most value to. I don't know, do you want to hear about this room? Actually, I'm quite proud of this room as well. So this is our podcast suite. Well, it was actually just our Cape Town boardroom, which I then hijacked and turned into our podcast suite. And when I was building my restaurant, actually, which is a whole other story, I met this guy who used to build props in like Hollywood and for TV commercials in America. And he built this thing for me in my restaurant. And I said to him, I have this like vision for this Koza sign, which I want to go in this podcast suite that I'm building. And I literally just told him what I wanted. I was like, I wanted aluminium with backlighting on this huge red soundboard, because this is actually functional as well. This deadens the sound. And he was like, cool, yeah, no problem. And he built it. It was as simple as that, really. And it is just brilliant. I mean, it's actually quite an intricate piece. So that's one side of the studio. And then, yeah, it's a pretty straightforward studio. There's just two floating microphones, which is really, really nice. Headphone amp so that you can hear yourself nice and properly. Mixing desk is over there. And then we put just a basic lighting gantry in. So I thought, let's like film this thing sort of Joe Rogan style with 3 camera angles that we could jump between. And that's why we put some lights in as well. So the podcasts go out on YouTube, and then the audio gets stripped and goes out on, I think, 7 different podcast platforms. And yeah, the podcast, we've done 6. We're going to start them up again this year. We're relatively successful. I think asking South Africans to watch a 40-minute YouTube video is a little bit of a stretch. But like, you know, I think we need to be playing in the space, and I think that will change. I think people will eventually really come to like these things. I mean, if people are prepared to watch Joe Rogan for 3 hours, hopefully they'll be prepared to watch me for 40 minutes. Welcome to my very noisy little Mazda MX-5. It's highly modified. And what's quite funny actually is I always said to myself, I don't like convertibles and I don't like modifying cars because they break. So I bought a highly modified convertible as my first car. But this is actually the first car I've ever bought for myself, because I've been doing this job since I was 19 and I just never needed a car. So, and I was very fortunate. So when it came time to sort of, you know, when I had a bit of money, and I thought, well, let me buy myself something like a bit old and a bit interesting. And this thing came along, and it's actually quite a crazy story. So I was in the market and I was looking around, and I know the guys from Crossley and Webb really well, and they said to me, there's this really interesting little Mazda that might come on the market. Do you want to take a look at it? So they got it from the collector's house, and they brought it to the dealership, and I walked in and I was looking at this car, and I thought to myself, this car looks very familiar. And I said to the salesman, I said, does this car belong to a guy called John or whatever? And he said, how the hell did you know that? And I said, well, because I used to date his daughter. So what happened was, I met this really lovely girl in Matric, actually the same girl whose dad sort of got me into motoring journalism. And he was a car collector, and this was one of the first cars he ever bought for himself, and he kept it. And when her name was Kate and I got our licenses, this was one of the cheapest cars he had. So he used to say to us, well, you know, off you go, you guys can take that out, you know, if you want to, I don't know, go to the movies or whatever. So this actual car that we're sitting in right now is one of the first cars I ever drove, well, legally, after I got my license. So when I saw it sitting in front of me in Crossley Webb, I just thought to myself, well, I have to buy this car. I mean, it's just this car somehow made its way back to me, and I absolutely have to buy it. And thankfully, it's probably been one of the best purchases I've ever made, because the guy looked after it so well. It was in extremely good condition with extremely low mileage, and touch wood, in the 2 years that I've owned this thing, literally all I've had to do is put tires on it. That's it. Well, and petrol in the tank, obviously, which is, you know, quite important. So no, it's just been the most wonderful ownership experience, and I think that this what my experience speaks to is kind of what our sentimental brand is about. You know, our vintage car brand is the sort of joy you can get out of owning older cars. And the thing is, the new car market has gone nuts, right? I mean, a top spec Volkswagen Polo today costs 390,000 Rand. 390,000 Rand. Do you know how many cars you can buy for 390,000 Rand? This wasn't even half that much, you know, and it's this wonderful little rare Mazda, which is actually, well, hopefully is appreciating, you know, in value. And I mean, how many cars do that? You know, you buy a car these days, you drive off the showroom floor, and it's worth like 40% less than what you paid for it. So no, I'm chuffed to bits with this little thing. It's a lovely car to drive. You know, Cape Town suits convertibles quite well. When the weather's good, you drop the top. And you know, about 2-3 weeks ago, my girlfriend and I jumped in and we went on this drive, you know, around Camps Bay, Clifton, Llandudno, into Hout Bay, over Chapman's Peak, and into Nerdhoek to this nice new restaurant out there. And I mean, this is just one of those perfect cars you could ever hope to do that in. So no, my buyer satisfaction has been high with this little guy. It's been a good experience. So obviously Cape Town has the best coffee in the world, generally speaking, and I thought I would take you on, well, to make this not a pointless drive in my car, I thought I would take you for some properly good coffee at one of my favorite venues in Cape Town. It's a coffee shop which happens to have some of the nicest, rarest vintage cars in the world for sale, you know, just sort of lying around, you know, which is good. So I really wanted to bring you here. This is Crossley and Webb. It's quite possibly one of the most beautiful places in the whole world, I think. It's a vintage and supercar dealership in Gardens, Cape Town, and I just think really executed really spectacularally. I come here really often just to like clear my head. Actually, there's a publicly open, available coffee shop with fantastic coffee, which really helps, and it's just a lovely place to sit for half an hour and just get, I don't know, get out of the rat race, forget about everything for a little bit, listen to some nice V8s right on cue. So I think this place reminds me that, you know, obviously we're a consumer platform and we want to provide really solid consumer advice, and we will always do that as Cars.co.za, but it's also nice to be reminded that there's a lot of joy in cars, there's a lot of heritage, a lot of history, a lot of engineering which has led us to this point, you know, and in this really modern world of cars that we're in, and Crossing Web sort of always has that for me. So yeah, I absolutely love it here, and I think we do need to go from Kia Picanto again. So no offense, Kia, but you know, we do need to be able to talk about those and to talk about, you know, something like this, Audi R8 V10 Spider, you know, with a Lamborghini engine. Told you, it happens a lot here. So yeah, it also encourages me to dream, you know. What's the dream? What's the dream sort of 2-car garage, for instance? And I think it'd be nice to have something practical, like maybe a Range Rover Sport, a Land Rover Discovery, a G-Wagon. I freaking love G-Wagons. Even like you get these like sort of sleeper SUVs like VW Touaregs, which are great cars, and they're just so useful and so practical, and kind of car you can drive every day and go on holiday with. But then I think you want something that's a bit special for the weekend. And one of the most exhilarating drives of my whole life was the first Ferrari I ever got to drive, which was a 458 Spider. And we filmed it around Cape Town, sort of Signal Hill, Table Mountain, roof down. One of the best car noises in car noise history as well. And yeah, that could make a pretty sweet 2-car garage. Although my Mazda MX-5 and a BMW V8 M5 is also tempting. Can I have a 4-car garage? Is that fine? Yeah, when it comes to the videos, I don't like to script myself too heavily. I find that the more organic and more natural the presentation comes across, the more people seem to relate to it or find it a bit easier to watch, which is great. And I think that's kind of also something that sets us apart from the competition, is that it's more like a conversation than a review. I try almost pretend like I have a friend of mine in the passenger seat, or someone who's asked me for advice, and just telling them about the car, you know, and what I think of it and how it fits into the market. Oh God, I love this car, but jeez, after like a week of driving it, I'm like, give me a Kia Picanto. So at this point, April 2021, we've got about 650 videos on the channel. And to be honest with you, it gets blurry. Like I mean, there's no way I can remember every video we've ever done. I think some highlights for me has been driving the Mustang Bullet on the anniversary of the movie in the hills of the south of France. You know, that was like, that's just phenomenal. And then driving an Aston Martin DBS Superleggera through the Berchtesgaden region of Germany, between Austria and Germany there in the summer, that was also just mind-blowing, you know. And then more recently I got to drift a G-Wagon, you know, the new Merc G-Wagon for one of our latest videos on this off-road racetrack outside Cape Town. Our Ford Ranger Raptor launch in Australia was incredible. They built this like off-road playground for us, and I got paired up with this Aussie like NASCAR driver who just kept telling me to go faster and faster and faster, and I would like clear air, you know, like Ranger right off the ground. That was super, super cool. Yeah, I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I've had, and some of the moments have just been really simple, like sitting around a fire talking nonsense at the end of like a long drive, you know, with other journos and colleagues and the film crew. Some of those are the most special moments, you know. But this business is actually full of them. I mean, it's hard work. We put in a lot of hours. Sometimes it's like up at 4, home at 9, you know, for a full day shoot. But yeah, this the good ones come at you thick and fast as well, which is nice. Alrighty, thank you very much for joining me. Thanks for listening to my story. It's been an absolute privilege and really wonderful to share the last 8 years of my life with you. And of course, the story continues on our YouTube channel, so do check it out. Just hit YouTube, search cars.coza. It's as easy as that. While you're there, subscribe. You know, that's always a good thing, and we'll see you there. Alrighty, cheers.